Hey guys, welcome back to Dude We Can Fix It. Today I'm going to show you how to replace the front brakes and rotors on your Toyota Camry. So we will begin by lifting the vehicle, securing it on a jack stand, and removing the tire. It's a 19mm socket. I will use a 3/16 inch internal diameter tubing to put over the top of this bleeder, and I will use a 5/16 inch wrench to loosen the bleeder. Now that that is secured, go ahead and turn this bleeder about a half a turn, counterclockwise. There we go. Now you should be able to compress this some by hand. You see that fluid coming out. Get your C-clamp and use it to compress the brake pad into the piston. Once the piston has bottomed out, you'll feel some resistance on your C-clamp. At this point, stop. Do not continue to tighten it. So we can see here that the foot is on the brake pad. Let's go to the back. We can see the other end of the C-clamp is on the back of the caliper. And we can see that the piston in here is depressed. Not like an emotional state, it's just pushed all the way back in the bore. Makes sense? So now that we cannot compress our C-clamp anymore, we don't want to force it. That means that this piston is all the way depressed back in its bore. So we'll go ahead and close the bleeder off. Give it a nice little snug finish. Don't break it though, that will be a bad day. Now we can go ahead and remove this line and drain the fluid out of it. There we go. Now remove your C-clamp. All right, now we can use a 14mm socket to take loose this bolt and this bolt holding on the caliper. At this point, if you have a bungee cord or a piece of cable or wire, it will be handy to be able to pull this off, route your strapping mechanism through it, and then tie this off somewhere up high. So our caliper's over here, tied up to our coil spring, and there's no tension on our flexible hose. You don't want to let this just hang, because it can damage the inside of this flexible line and cause you issues, and then you'll have to replace this line as well. Now let's separate our brake pads from our rotor. Take these spreaders out and make sure to save these for the reinstallation. You can remove and inspect your brake pads. We can see that we have uneven wear on these pads. This one is pretty much down to the metal, and this one still has at least 1/8 of an inch of pad left. So I'm going to guess that what has happened here is our slider pins were not moving freely enough to allow even pad wear, which is why we'll make sure to remove these and lubricate them very well before reinstallation. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove these two pins just to give you a better viewing angle. We're going to remove this 17mm bolt and this 17mm bolt to remove the caliper bracket. At this point, we can now remove the rotor. If it seems to be stuck on, we will use a hammer and tap lightly in between the studs to loosen up any rust. By hammering on the back of the rotor, I was able to remove it more easily. However, you see I've also caused damage to this rotor, which is okay because I have new rotors to put on here. However, if you were planning on reusing these rotors, make sure you don't hammer on the back side of it. All right, I just got done cleaning up our caliper bracket. Now it's a good time to make sure that your new brake pads match your old brake pads. They should be the same dimension and have the same footprint. That way you know that they will fit correctly. Now if you have new hardware, you can put your new hardware in your brake caliper bracket. If you don't have new hardware, you can simply clean up your hardware. I'm going to go ahead and swap this hardware over and put on the new hardware. You should be aware that when you have a new rotor, it comes oiled. That way it doesn't rust before you put it on your vehicle. So you need to take some brake parts cleaner and clean this surface here where your brake pad rides, and also this surface here where your brake pad rides. I've already done that, and we are now ready to install the brake rotor. Now we are just about ready to install the caliper bracket. However, first, I'm going to lube the inside of these two bores. I'm lubricating this with brake and caliper grease. Next, I will lubricate our two guide pins. We are now ready to put our brake caliper bracket into position. And now we're ready to install our brake caliper bracket. You'll need your two bolts. And a 17mm socket. Next, we will install our brake pads. First, I'm going to lubricate the ends of the ears. Now we can install our little spring clips. And then our slider pins. And now we are ready for our caliper. Now, if you cannot get your caliper to fit over your brake pads, you need to make sure that your piston is fully seated. Use your old brake pads as a buffer between the piston and the C-clamp, and that will allow you to compress them fully. Now you should be able to put the caliper over your new brake pads. Now take your two 14mm bolts and thread them in by hand. Now tighten these up with a 14mm socket. And make sure that your caliper has a little bit of play side to side. There's not much here because these new brake pads and a new rotor, so there's not very much clearance. However, it does still move a little bit. So now that we have the new brake pads on, we need to pump the brake pedal to make up the distance that we compress the piston. So pump this a few times until it firms up. There we go. So now find your brake fluid reservoir, check the level on the side, make sure it is at max. If it's not, add some brake fluid and you're all set. Well, that's how you change the front brakes on your car. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on your bell notifications for future videos. As always, dude, we can fix it, and I'll see you next time.